2019. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank Frost Middle School for inviting us here tonight, particularly Mr. Abate, who's not only the principal but the head chef here at Frost. We had some wonderful pizza. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for the wonderful items that you gave us. We always love to get out to the schools whenever we can, hold meetings there. We feel as a board it's important to know what's going on in our schools, in our classrooms, and this gives us an opportunity to do that. So again, thank you for having us tonight. I am told there are blue slips for anyone who wants to address the board tonight. I don't know where they are.
They're right by the agenda at the front of the
At
room.
the front of the room.
Right next to the agenda.
Okay, and you can get those. Also wanted to thank Shannon Wheeler, the assistant principal here, for she did a wonderful job setting up for us. So thank you for everything you've done this evening. For those of you who are tuning in and are looking to see a little more in-depth discussion on the items that will come to the board for a voting meeting, this is the one that you want to see. There will be a much more in-depth discussion on each of the items that are being presented tonight. So this is the one you want to see. And we'll jump right in with item 1. I do not have any blue slips, so is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the board tonight would like to do so? Seeing none, we'll move then to item 2, Frost Middle School Points of Pride. Mr. Abate and Ms. Wheeler. Good evening.
Good evening.
That looks like a talk show.
Well, it is, I'm not gonna lie.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. We really enjoy having you here, obviously, at Frost. Tonight we wanted to thank you in many ways. Food is just the beginning of our thanks. Small token, you support us all year long. But you don't always see firsthand exactly where a lot of the resources go that you've sent our way. So rather than give you a lot of academic stuff tonight, which is important, and I'm sure you'd love to see all the numbers, but you've got all night to do that, we're going to tell you a little bit about what we've done with the resources that both the board and the parents, the families, and the community have sent our way to kind of liven up and refresh the school and the ways that we've managed to do that for kids.
Tony and I started our work together 4 years ago, and we had a vision of what we wanted Frost to be. Our philosophy of education is very similar, and that philosophy is if kids feel safe and connected to a building, if they take ownership of the spaces within that building, the learning will come. They're comfortable enough that their learning will follow. And we have an amazing staff of teachers here that have always done an excellent job. So how could we kind of make that a more comfortable learning experience for some of our kids that don't really do the school thing? So how could we get them to kind of do the school thing and buy into the environment? So we wanted to create these spaces where not only students would be comfortable, but where we could have collaboration between staff and stakeholders and our students. Where teachers could collaborate together and utilize some of those open spaces. And so that kids, felt like this was home, an extension of home. They spend 8 hours a day here. They really should feel like, this is their second home.
So we've talked a lot about this in the past. You were a big part, obviously, of making this happen for us and designating us for this grant. But this was a big sort of community/academic piece that we were able to pull together with the generosity of Amazon and of the board. This is connected to our library. We have reached a point where students any given day can come down and they can take an idea really kind of from start to finish. It might take them a couple of days, but you'll see in the corner there on the far left, that's a student pressing a t-shirt. So he came down and actually he designed a little logo. It was kind of mocked off like the old school Nintendo logo with his name kind of printed in it. And he came down, he designed that outline, and he pressed it on a shirt and was able to leave with it and wear it that day. Idea being it's a space that we can use during our faculty time and also after school where Mr. Shinovar keeps it open for students to come down and just get their creative juices flowing and get involved in all sorts of technological items. So there's everything from a station to just take apart gadgets and see how they work, to 3D printing, to the clothing press, to our green screen studio. It's really evolved into something pretty cool for the building. We're proud of it.
We had a student last year that broke his mouthpiece to his instrument. So he looked up the design for that online, came down and said, Mr. Shinohara, do you think we could make this? And they did, and it worked. So just, an idea that he had, and I'm sure he saved his parents a little money in the end. So that was nice. But yeah, they really leaned onto this space. They love the green screen, because kids love to photograph themselves. So, they're underwater, or they're in Egypt, or wherever they are on that green screen, they really enjoy that as well. The courtyard. This is probably my favorite space in this building. If it weren't for Christy Descovich and all the amazing work that she does as our student assistance provider, this would not have taken shape. I love the outdoors, but Christy really needs the outdoors. And so do some of our kids, to be honest with you. This has kind of become for her and the kids that she works with a very therapeutic environment. When kids are struggling and they're down in her office, the first thing Christy will say to them is, let's go outside. She had a student that really struggled here at school, could not find success, who she had in our courtyard pulling trees out. And he was so happy and so proud of his accomplishments. And he would run into the office and say, did you see what we did out there today? It was something that he owned.
We didn't have a lot of tools when we started that. Christy just bought a hand tool. So he pulled one out Griswold style. We have a picture of him standing on a stump that he hand dug out with a little shovel. It was the craziest thing ever. He really needed to kind of work something out.
His kids out there to practice, so they have their instruments out in the courtyard, and it's nice and soothing for them. Michael Vassage, one of our main head teachers here, during our activity night, did the Telltale Heart, his rendition of it in the courtyard.
He recited it from memory for the kids. It was amazing.
From memory, acted it out. It was absolutely amazing, but that space lent to that community feel. And you walked out there and you could hear a pin drop. It was amazing how he was able to, get their attention. But it's a space that they're used to. They lunch out there, they love it out there. Now we have it open if it ever becomes 7, I'm sure doesn't matter, but they felt the time as well, so they could go out and they can read. Many teachers have taken kids out there to read, just giving them an alternative to the traditional classroom setting.
So a lot of this was made possible by the foundation. Christy acquired a grant, so we, on your way out, or maybe even on your way, you've seen, we've now added these more permanent canopies that will not blow over like our last ones, some benches that convert to seating, so you can actually bring an entire class out there and have enough seating and table space to work. It's a place where kids can gather, and that was the idea.
If you're a bird watcher, which I was not until the courtyard, we have an amazing variety of birds out there. So kids will go and I'm like, come here, see the woodpecker? And they're like, oh, that's a woodpecker. Yeah, we have hummingbirds and we have orioles. So birds that the kids don't really get to see, we have a whole variety of them.
We also, as a quick side note, have a hawk. A hungry hawk. There's not a lot of furry woodland creatures in the courtyard, but there are a lot of birds. So if you happen to walk and look at some of the windows, there's bird prints in the windows, because I think his strategy is to chase the bird into the window and knock it out and fly off.
Yeah.
So he's been awesome.
We watched a hawk attack in action. It was interesting.
So the lobby. So when the renovation came through, we ended up with a really large vestibule area. It was kind of unique for our building because of the way that us and homes, the way we were set up, kind of made those two walls. We didn't have a lot going on in it for a long time, and we were kind of kicking around what we wanted to do with it. We decided that in addition to wanting it to be a kind of a showpiece where people come in as their first impression, and a place where parents and so forth can wait comfortably, or kids that are before and after school, we wanted it again to be a meeting space, a place where kids can something a little more unique. And so this was done with fortunately from the bond money that we were allotted. We have games out there. Kids will sit there during lunch. It's nice and secure because we keep our outer doors locked during the day, and it's inside all the office windows and so forth. So kids will play chess. They'll play all kinds of board games at lunch, and it's just it really gives the building something, a point of pride for when you walk in.
They have now, we have a lot of kids here that take the bus and they have to wait for transportation, so we have a lot in the vestibule, so that's been great. But now also during Falcon time, it's can we go out and play games? So now during that time, a lot of kids will come out here and they'll play chess and Connect Four and Jenga, so it's a nice space for them too, just to kind of wind down from their day. The game room. This is really a creation for PBIS. We have a pretty strong PBIS program here, so we want to reward those behaviors that we would like the kids to repeat in school. And they can buy their way into the game room. We have staff that will go down there and open it up during Falcon time, and they can go down. There's also teachers that will take kids in. It's utilized by our SAP, as well as our peer-to-peer program with our center kids here at Frost. We have it open during all activity nights, obviously, but this is a really nice space. We do have a PlayStation in there, so that's obviously, the kids really get into that. But it's just a nice space. You would not believe the kids that go in there and they go right for the ping pong table. And it's just, just to work some energy out, or the foosball table. So it's an area for them that it is their game room, and they know it, and they feel very comfortable in there. But a lot of kids will just be in the corner with a book sometimes. It just depends on the group that you get to go down there. But it really has been a nice reward center for us because they do want to spend time in it.
With the exception of the district furniture that's in there, virtually everything in there was donated, either by PTSA or by families in the community. We kind of put out a call for board games and that kind of stuff, and it came flooding in, so we put it in that room. And pretty neat. We borrowed this from this idea from a building we went to for one of our 5D trainings. I think it was downriver. I don't remember, it was French. Maybe, I can't remember. But we popped into a room that was not the right room for the training, but it was this, and there was a staff member playing pool with a student and just kind of talking about the day. And we looked at each other and said that would be something good to, to have her. And all of this really was kind of based on this.
And all the research that's been done, and obviously Livonia is investing in these community spaces, but we really at Frost, we want to educate the whole child. And there's so many parts to that. There's so much more than academics. There's that whole social emotional piece, that developing of relationships, and the whole purpose of these areas is to do that. To allow staff to do that with students to do that with each other, and to bring stakeholders into the building. We host a lot of meetings here, and I think it has a lot to do with the way our building feels. It is a nice, you walk in the building and you get a good feel to it, and that's exactly what we wanted to create. So it's nice to see that come to fruition after working on it for the last couple of years.
So we want to thank you very much for everything that you have done for our ability to make this possible. Everything from the board to cabinet to Mr. Francis, who I'm constantly on the phone with. Hey, can I put a pool table in one of these rooms? He's very patient with me. And all, of course, the bond renovation folks who came in and just did an amazing job with our building. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Comments from the board? Mrs. Bird.
A couple questions. Can you tell us more about Falcon Time? I know I've heard of it, I just don't remember the details.
So Falcon Time traditionally here was 25 minutes of silent reading, which is certainly valuable, and we still do that as the default. If there aren't other activities going on in classes, that's kind of where we start. However, we felt like there was a lot more we could do with that time, both academically and in the climate and culture piece. So we've opened it up to students being able to move the building if they need help from another teacher. So they'll go, a lot of times they'll go see their math teachers. Maybe they need to retake a test, maybe they just need a little extra help, and they'll do that. It's a time when you have students can be rewarded for being caught up and being in good standing with their grades. They can use some of their Falcon dollars to go to a place like the makerspace or the game room and so on, to just kind of decompress a little bit during the day. We often adults need some time in the middle of the day to kind of reset, and I think we forget sometimes that kids their day's a little bit more grueling than ours, considering they're just in the same spot, over and over, same desk, same chair. So to have them have that piece of time in the middle of the day to just sort of recharge. A lot of times kids they'll just listen to music and read and just get themselves where they need to be to finish out the day.
It was based on the before model of having like that power hour. We looked at that, and then we took a trip out to Novi Middle School that actually had the academic 20. And they have 20 minutes to do this same types of things. So we walked around their middle school, and it worked so well. And it's changed, and it's different, and it's new. And at first, our staff was like, "Oh, you're gonna let these kids out?" But they've managed themselves very well. It's a reward, and if the kids understand that if they don't handle it well, it'll be taken away, which is a consequence to inappropriate behavior. So as a result of that, they love it. The worst thing you can do, and I've had to do it for testing, is say, we're freezing Falcon time today, and they're like, why? Because they enjoy it so much. So we did a lot of research into it, and it works so well. Some kids just need 20 minutes just to breathe, especially to get caught up on homework and things like that. And again, our kids here at Frost, they're on the bus, and a lot of them don't walk, and they don't have transportation home, so they must be on the bus. So if they need extra help, that's the perfect time. It's kind of there after school, so they can get it.
We'll use it a little bit too for our programs to do some of the things they need to do, like our center will sell water and that sort of thing. Our athletic director will sign up people for sports, so that we don't have to pull kids out of actual regular class hours. So there's a little bit of housekeeping stuff that'll work its way into there sometimes too. It's a little bit of everything.
And that is one thing that I love about it is when you talk to kids who are making that transition and who have gone recently into 7th grade, the thing they either at 6th grade if they're looking forward to or 7th grade and they're here and they're experiencing is that for the first time they get some choices. And that is such an exciting part of being in middle school. So I love this, and I love how you're giving them the freedom and the responsibility that goes with it. But it is a real part of your day. Everyone needs a few minutes to breathe. You mentioned the PBIS and the game room where they can buy their way in and out and so forth. Can you tell us more about that system?
Sure.
I know it's not dollars, but what? Tell us more about it.
Yeah. So basically, the students. Every PBIS program has some sort of a reward to reinforce positive behaviors. Ours are Falcon dollars, and we've got the goofy little Bitmojis, and every staff member has their own little picture on it, and they change them up all the time. So the kids, they want them because they're goofy little collectible, kind of almost like garbage pail kids back in the day. So kids will gather these for all sorts of different things. Staff will recognize it for something done in the hall, or maybe in a classroom, staff will go around and say everybody who has homework, and they'll pass them out and so on. So the kids then acquire piles of these, and we need to have something for them to do that's cool in the building with them. And so they'll use them at lunch. They can take a few Falcon dollars and sign up. They can play games on we could take on the big projector screen, and they can play Xbox on that. They can spend a couple of dollars to go to the game room. They can put their dollars in for raffles that we do. We've been doing them weekly. We need to restart that for next year.
So the point of PBIS, the reason that Frost adopted it, and when I came in, I kind of threw some energy into it because it made so much sense to me. It's you want to reward kids for those positive behaviors that we want them to repeat. So you come into class and you're on time the first couple days of school, and teachers will give Falcon dollars. Oh, so I'm going to be at class on time, and that becomes a healthy habit. Or you have your supplies today. Everybody that has their planner signed, I'm going to give out Falcon dollars. So kind of those classroom routines, teachers will early on start rewarding for. But then it can be anything. When I'll give a good example. So I had a group of kids who were putting their garbage on the pencil little dispenser outside of my office in the morning because our 7th graders are in that main hallway. And I got on the PA and I'm like, okay guys, who's leaving their garbage? Like, you need to come down here and fess up for it. Come on, don't make me look at the camera. And these 2 little girls came down, and they were like, these are not kids who get in trouble. I mean, they saw me and they were all shaky. And I gave them Falcon dollars. I said, this is for honesty. Thank you for coming down and telling me and taking ownership. Here you go. So it's kind of to build that. These are the things I want you to do. I want you to be able to be honest or clean up after yourself or do whatever you need to do. So kids will wipe down the tables after lunch, and they'll say, can we have Falcon dollars? 5 Falcon dollars gets you Tachis at the school store. So if you really want to reward a kid, you just give them 5 right out of the get-go, and you're their hero. But yeah, the behaviors we want them to repeat, that's what we use Falcon dollars for. It really flipped our discipline system entirely the other way because it's no longer punitive. These are the consequences, and kids know that, but we're going to reward you for what you do well. And all kids want to be rewarded, and it's very effective. So that's why we kind of do it and set up places where they can spend their money.
Well, you've obviously created a very, very welcoming environment. I mean, you're certainly welcoming of all of us being in here, but you can, even as we're walking down to this room, passing by the courtyard, I'm a landscape gardening nut. I mean, I just stopped in my tracks, like, oh my gosh, that is gorgeous. But you guys have done a really, really good job creating a very welcoming culture. And I love the idea that you recognize that this is an extension of home. This is where they spend a lot of their waking hours. So
for sure.
Thank you so much.
Kudos.
Anything else from the board?
No, we're always so proud of what's happening at Frost Middle School.
Oh, thank you.
And I know how proud you are of your students and of the amazing staff that works in partnership with you each day. So you really captured the essence of our community with character work and really molded it into your own here at Frost. And I think that's personally what's so exciting, is you've taken elements of that and established its importance with the students and with the staff, but also have put your own mark on it to make it your own and make it unique to this school. And this is an exciting place to be. So thanks for welcoming us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, that will now move us on to item 3, our committee of the whole, and we have one item, our operating millage and sinking fund update. And we'll hear from Mrs. Oaquist.
Thank you, President Johnson. I'm passing down information for the board, and I'd like to just walk you through some of this. So I wanted to give you an update on where we are with regard to our operating millage and sinking fund informational campaign. As you know, our district is able to provide informative information to our parents, to our community on the millage and sinking fund proposals. So what I'd like to walk you through is the blue timeline. Do you have that in the front of your packet? And so I'll just give you a brief summary of some of the things that have been done to date and that we are planning to do. And then I also have the updated materials. I shared with you the materials last Monday. We talked about a couple of changes. We've updated those, and these are ready to go. So I will highlight a few things for us. As you know, the first portion of the spreadsheet deals with all of our tasks leading up to the campaign kickoff. So as you know, we held 5 public Board of Education meetings. Those included study sessions, committee of the whole, and finally our regular meeting, in which the board voted 7-0 at our March 25th meeting to have both of these proposals put before our voters on August 6th. Concurrently, you'll also see embedded within that were just some of the meetings with regard for our internal team to work to not only prepare the research and study both our long-term facility plan and our long-term technology plan, but also to take a look at the options for the scope of the millage, specifically the sinking fund, to review again the impact of the operating millage request, and to propose the recommendations that we did to the Board of Education. Once that was completed, at the end of March, and the board went ahead and voted, we created information to be posted on our LPS website, and we created a special section. In fact, there is a button for easy access to all of that on the front page of the website. And we began in earnest creating the information, the logos for the campaign. The Observer posted a story about the proposals, and I know we'll continue to cover that in greater detail. As you know, we have our main information brochure, our informational postcards, the FAQ, and the posters that have all been created. And so just as a reminder, we're going to have the posters, which are a 2-panel set, the front and back. This is just a mini version of what parents in our community will see in the lobby of each school as they enter between now and the end of the year. This informational brochure is what we will utilize. It will go home with our students' K-6 in backpack mail. It will go home via email as well with our families. And then this will be utilized at our community information meetings, as well as shared widely throughout our community. We also have the postcard, which will be an information. It's a bit more brief than the brochure. The postcard will also be distributed at all schools and mailed to absentee voters. And then finally, an important piece of information which will continue to be updated throughout the process will be our FAQ. That will be available on our website at all times, and then we will also have that to distribute as we have community meetings. In addition to that, we have a special issue of the dialogue that is at the printer now. As you know, one of the things as part of our high impact school governance work was to discuss ways that we can continue to get information out about our points of pride within Livonia Public Schools. So we have a special spring edition of the dialogue that is at the printer now and will be in homes in just a couple of weeks. Included that are many points of pride from information throughout the district, but it also has information on the millage, which will go out to 55,000 households and businesses in our community. And as you know, we send a senior news every month that goes via email for our community, for our seniors who may be watching, who are part of our community. We have the opportunity to tag on to the online senior newsletter that is sent monthly from the Livonia Senior Center. And so we always provide them an update each month with a newsletter, and our June edition focuses on the millage and sinking fund. And as you know, what we always do anytime we have a bond, a millage, or a sinking fund election is we always have through law firm also review all of our materials for compliance with all election laws, because we are not able to provide material that advocates but simply provides information. So at no cost, all of these materials were reviewed and approved by Thrun. So I'll just give you a moment to take a look at the front page. Really shares in the columns of community, staff, and parents and whether or not those items have been completed, the steps that have been taken thus far, and then that continues on page 2 and page 3, highlighting some of the meetings we will be holding, opportunities to provide information to our community, and other mailers or print information, as well as e-blasts that will be going out to our community, to our parents, and to our staff. So I thought it might be helpful for the board to have this information and also to have all of our updated print materials. So our community knows as well, all of this information is available on the front page of our website, and we will also be sharing that widely through the many venues that we've highlighted here.
Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Mrs. Oquist. It's obviously doing a good job getting this out. So.
Yes. I just wanted to ask Mrs. Smith, Mr. Francis, is there anything else you'd like to add with regard to either the materials we've shared or the way in which we're getting information out?
We've got upcoming events, as you were mentioning, with regard to conversations with staff in different groups across the district, while they're still here, and we're just kicking off. We've still got several months to go, and we're going to have a lot of information available to the community, the public, and our staff, etc.
And of course, if anybody watching, of course, has questions, they're more than welcome to reach out to Mr. Francis and I. We'd be happy to answer any questions they might have.
Thank you.
Mrs. Berry.
Mrs. Oquist?
Yes.
If, our community has a whole lot of smaller groups that meet.
Yes.
If there is a group that would like information specifically presented to their group, is that something that we could accommodate?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And
you are looking at the speaker bureau here
Yes.
between the three of us and Mrs. Jenkins. And of course, if a group would like that, they can contact Mrs. Wozniak in the superintendent's office, and we'll be happy to set something up.
Okay, so just the main phone number for the school district,
Yes.
and ask for superintendent's office and we can get it arranged.
Absolutely.
Terrific. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none? Mrs. Frank.
Mrs. Oquist, I'm sorry if I missed it, if you said this already. Do we have the date set for community meetings yet or not yet set?
Our first one is June 4th
Okay.
at 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
And we are committed to keeping our community only for about an hour. So we have a thorough presentation, but also an opportunity for Q&A at the end. So it'll be about half and half. And the first one will be on June 4th, and the second one will be at a date to be announced a little later in July, closer to the election, at central office.
Okay.
Anything else on this point? right, seeing none, we'll move on to item 4, our building and site, and I'll turn it over to our chair, Mr. Centers.
All right. Item 8 is a dashboard report for the first quarter. Mr. Francis and Mr. Smith will be sharing that with us.
Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? I want to just point out that this is our quarterly event, the quarterly dashboard report. Mr. Smith from Owners Rep Plant Moran Cressa is here to go over with you, and you received a smaller version in your packet, but did we have a larger one for them? I will have larger ones for you in just a moment while Mr. Do you have a second one? Yep. I will have large ones for you in just a moment. Just so you can have a copy of it. Mr. Smith is going to go through it with you.
Sure. I think where I'll start, I'll skip over some of the financials. Good evening, everybody, by the way. Nice to be here. Happy belated Mother's Day to everyone as well. Hope everybody got outside and enjoyed the weather a little bit. Like I said, I'll skip over the financial piece so we have a bigger version to go over. But as has been processed, we usually start from the beginning. And roughly 6 years ago, we passed the initial bond, and it's fun to be talking about a sinking fund as well. You know, the overall goal was to complete all the work within 5 years, which we accomplished successfully. And now we're into a 6th year, working on a kind of a bonus facility in Nijiro Elementary as well. So the last 5-6 years have gone really well. As Mr. Abate said, you know, a lot of improvements to the buildings. Hopefully they're being enjoyed by the staff and students alike. Where we're at right now is we're in really good shape for this summer. We've presented all of our award recommendations to you prior, and all that work is currently being planned and underway, and we'll be getting started with that work very soon. Relative to the bond, this month in May, we're anticipating doing final billings for all of the work from last summer. That's all of the loose ends from last summer, including final billings, every little nick and cranny of punch list items and whatnot. So that's being completed. We're currently underway with Nijiro. All of those long lead items are now underway. We actually did do some work over spring break. We had a 2-week period where we were able to get into the buildings and accomplish some of that stuff. As you'll recall, the summer window on Nijiro, because of their academic schedule, is a little bit condensed. So we're looking for opportunities to get in there and kind of get some of that stuff out of the way. And we've done that successfully. Work will continue here in May on a second shift basis after school gets out. Again, looking for those opportunities to advance the construction in advance of this, the full summer move out. Relative to the pavement projects, we're meeting next week with, we have 2 pavement vendors for this year, Nagel Paving and T&M Asphalt Paving. We've got a lot of sites, so it's good to have 2 folks in there. We're meeting them next week. We're going to go over some of their site-specific schedules and kind of how, yes, it's occurring over the summer, but specifically how there's some activities occurring at the school. I want to make sure that we're coordinating traffic in and out of the schools as needed to accommodate those events. The roofing work is underway as well. Our long lead items are the metal panels. Those are being ordered and should be here in late to mid-June in time for the implementation of it. The rest of the material is readily available. In fact, in addition to that, as you guys approved last week, our last board meeting, we're writing amendments to RTA, who is our roofing designer, and we're going to get them started on next summer's projects as well. We've identified those roofs with the idea of getting those out to bid this fall. So we're working with them as well. And they will start to do some of that work as they can prior to summer. And then, as you can imagine, most of these folks get really bogged down, but they can get some of that design work done here in May and leading up to also in early June, and then finish up with it in the fall as well once some of the summer school work winds down. So bottom line is we'll be in a really good position to get those packages out in the fall. And then our athletic fields, those have actually started. We've done some fencing work around the district at Stevenson and Franklin High Schools. But really the big start is going to occur starting this weekend actually, and then rolling in. Some of the spring events are now concluding this week. And Crews will be mobilizing this weekend, and next week we'll be starting on the stadium fields, removing the existing turf out there. Probably starting at Stevenson first. You'll see the first activity. Our long lead items, which are our turf and also our our scoreboards, all those approvals have been in. That stuff's under in production now. So we're gearing up. Work's going to be starting. There's going to be a lot of changes. There's a lot of activity out there on the athletic fields. And just so everybody remembers, there is some work still at Churchill. We're putting bullpens in at the softball and baseball stadiums there. So despite being done last summer, there's a little bit of work there too. In fact, that scoreboard is going to get a truss element similar to the other two high schools as well. So all that work is underway. It's ongoing. We're in a great position. We're meeting with those guys again next week, just to kind of go over things in advance of the big kickoff this week. So what are our critical project issues? We're looking to close out the other ones. It's really a procurement process right now till the school gets out at EG Hero. And we're coordinating things constantly out on site because there's a lot of traffic in and out of the high schools. It's important that everybody's communicating, understands who's going to be where, and that it's well communicated. One of the other items we're doing is we're working with Mrs. Smith to reconcile the bond interest on the project. We've had a placeholder in for a while, and now that we're well into the project, we're looking to match up our records and report that. We have a little bit of surplus, I believe, in the bond that we're working with the district in terms of ideas on maybe what to do with that. So there's some brainstorming and such going on behind the scenes. And then the other part of that is what are we going to do next year for our sinking fund projects? We've already kind of got underway with a big part, and that's going to be the roof. So we're doing 3 schools next summer. That's going to eat up, I would say, a very large, significant, well over 50% chunk of those remaining sinking funds for next year. So we're looking at, will that allow some room for pavement work? There's been talk of doing boiler replacements, maybe some other small items here and there. So those discussions are happening this spring and will continue into the summer. Yes.
Can I do questions now? Really quick, just as we're passing these through, what you said about the surplus. Okay, I have a surplus from the bond, and I just wanted to say thank you to you and your staff for diligently managing the process throughout, or managing the funds throughout the process, so that we do have a little bit of a surplus. And in terms of going forward, I just appreciate what you guys have done to make sure that we do have, I know the needs were greater than what we originally anticipated, so I think that we'll have more than enough things to do for that surplus. But I just wanted to say thank you for you and your staff for working so diligently to manage the funds, because as we know, costs in construction have not gone down since you started this project. They've continuously gone up. So a lot of your managing of the bid process and locking the numbers in back in the beginning have really, you've done a great job with that. So thank you so much for your work with that.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Mrs. Burden.
Along the line of Mrs. Frank's comment, just so that the public is aware also, we do have some surplus. We still have to work within the scope of what we put on the ballot. And there were still many things within. For example, some of the mechanical work, we could do a good amount of it, but not necessarily everything that we had wanted to do on the wish list kind of a thing. But can you folks address, both Mr. Francis and Mr. Smith, address some of the possible uses of that surplus so that the public understands what we're talking about with that?
Well, one of the items that have actually already begun is Nigiero. That was an item that is being done that was not originally, because when we started, as we recall, when the community voted on the bond in 2013, Nigiero was not a Livonia public school at the time. So they weren't taken into account with regard to specifically having a budget line item to be renovated as the other buildings have been done in the first 5 phases. So with a good portion, and the majority of that surplus that occurred after 5 phases, we have decided, the board has decided to renovate Nijiiro, and that is underway as we speak. We've begun some abatement areas, we've begun working in different areas, and then this summer in earnest will be the completion of that project.
A couple other pieces that we'll be looking at. I really will have a specific dollar amount for you once we close out Nijiiro, but we have some additional instructional material needs, some additional furniture needs for areas of the school that were not included. As you may recall, we were able to do classroom furniture, so desks, chairs, tables. We were able to do cafeteria tables, science equipment, music equipment, but there are, in some recently, just some foods rooms, etc. But there are additional needs with regard to many of our specialty and elective areas that are still in need of either instructional materials or instructional furniture items that would supplement their program. So we'll take a look at those. We also have many areas of the school that were not touched, so to speak, with regard to the bond. So whether that was our media centers, our kitchens, additional door replacement. As you know, we did corridor doors and classroom doors, but there were a number of other door packages within the schools. We updated the restrooms where we had toilets or sinks that were in need of repair, but they were not complete renovations. So we did partial renovations in the restrooms. So there are a wide variety of areas that still exist across the district. And what we'll do is, one, go back to our long-term facility plan and take a look at those items that are still considered the most critical needs, as well as, again, those instructional material needs for some of those elective and specialty classes that we'd like to continue to support. So those are just some examples of things that we're thinking about.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else? All right, well, thank you, Mr. Smith, and
I apologize
Mr.
for
Francis.
the copies. That was probably an off-site miss. I apologize.
Oh, Mrs. Burden's got another
I'm sorry, I do have
comment.
one other question for you. The fields at, or the track rather, at Stevenson and Franklin, the public uses those at times when it's at an off time, when we don't have some of our teams utilizing those. Are both of those going to be closed down for the summer while this construction is going on?
Yes, they'll be closed when they're under construction, and it will be marked pretty clearly that work will be going on on the
That whole
tracks.
complex, actually.
Yes.
Okay.
Because when you arrive, the whole complex will be under construction. There will be mounds of gravel and dirt. There will be
It'll be
heavy
pretty evident.
loaders. There will be, yes, there will
Okay.
be quite a bit of activity. And while there might be, we might be able to access it because the fence might be down, because we are changing up fences, we ask the community to please respect the fact that it is a construction area. And while you might be able to step over a pile and through an area where a fence is down because of construction, we ask you to please not, for the safety of yourself and everyone else.
Okay, and while those two are under construction this summer, our public folks can utilize that stadium at Churchill, correct?
Well, Churchill has a track, but so does
Our middle
Holmes and
schools.
Emerson. Our middle schools have a track.
Okay.
Here at Frost, in the parking lot area, there is a painted track as well. So we have other areas, and Bentley track is still open to the community, even though LJAL leases the field, the community still uses the track there.
Okay, great.
So we have multiple options.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Centers.
Yeah, all right. That concludes item A. Item B will be firewall replacement bid results. Mr. Francis.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Mr. Tim Clan. He is the district's administrator of information and educational technology to join me. I wanted to introduce the topic, and then I want to turn some of the more specific questions over to Mr. Clan, who will have a deeper knowledge of the technology and the information. He did put together a bit of a cheat sheet for the board that was added to your packet on the side. And we tried to, what happened was he wrote it, I read it, and looked at him and said, I still don't understand it, so let's whittle it down a little bit more. So we have that for you. Hopefully you had an opportunity to look at some of that, and any questions you might have, we'll go through together. But as an overall item, the firewall replacement was placed into the bond it was an original planned purchase out of bond funding. We have gone through nearly the entirety of the bond. At the time, the firewall that the district had was 3 years old. When we began the bond, obviously now it's 8 years old. So time has moved along, and just to let the board know, the budget that was put in place at the beginning of the bond, we have gone over that budget mostly because of the passage of time. We need to replace certain items with regard to the firewall. So what you have in front of you is a somewhat confusing potentially, and that's why we wanted to break it down for you, bid package. Generally speaking, when I bring you something in the construction area, we have a base bid, and then if there are alternates, they're usually pretty linear. We'll say, we're gonna do X, and as an alternate, we might add on this piece of Y or also purchase Z. And you can pick one or both or neither, and it's, like I said, it's fairly linear and easy to follow. I'm gonna let Mr. Klan walk you through the alternates, because as opposed to being individually easy to just pick one or the other, they came in combinations, because if you get one, it changes something else. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Mr. Klan to walk you through the bid pack, the alternates that are there, and what we are going to recommend for the firewall replacement.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a difficult. We also have Lindsay Johnson from Barton Mallow, who is here as well today, and hopefully she'll keep me in line if there's anything that I get incorrect. We spent a lot of time with Barton Mallow and with our own staff evaluating a lot of different and talking to a lot of different firewall companies in advance, trying to decide exactly what we were looking for. And it's obviously a very involved process because depending on which direction you decide to go, there's all kinds of different combination of things you can put together, which obviously alters the price and changes the price and changes what options you have and what options you have moving forward in the future. So I think what we've come up with is a great balance between cost and future expandability and functionality for what we currently need to keep things moving. So I don't know, should I go through?
Let's do this. We want to walk you.
Do you want to share the recommendation?
Yes. We're going to walk you through what the recommendation is, the combination of alternates that come with it, and the total cost, and then we'll be able to explain why those were chosen as opposed to some of the other combinations.
Okay. Yeah, I believe there's the different options, at least the ones we kind of isolated it down to are within that letter from Barton Mallow as well, but we'll start with option 2, which is the option that we're recommending, which was the base bid, which was the Cisco Firepower 2130 series appliance, which was, like I said, part of that base bid, but we're choosing alternate 1.
The simplest way to look at them is it has far more capacity than the 2130 series.
And in addition to that, we added voluntary alternate number 4, which was adding a second 4110 appliance for not only redundancy, but also to give us some future expansion in case we want to, in case our needs change over time. We're constantly increasing our bandwidth usage in the district, different things that happen, testing, it's always increasing, it never seems to go down. The question is always, what's it gonna do in a year, or 2 years, or 4 years, or whatever. So we wanna make sure that we built in enough to handle our current throughput needs, but also to handle any future expansion depending on what we decide to do and what kind of things are gonna be going through that firewall in the future.
So this was an add-on where we look at the return on the investment of the second one. Is it a necessity? No, not necessarily. Is it the smart, proactive thing to do for the return on what it would cost during this bid process to do the redundancy of the second? It gives us two potentials. One, the redundancy of if the first 4110 goes down, the second 4110 kicks in, and we don't lose the ability to use our network. In the future, to have the two of them, we could split what we're putting on each of them. So instead of one being a redundancy, split them and have part of our network on one, part on the other, and that will be able to have a greater capacity. So our recommendation, the recommendation of the IT department is to, at this point in time, go with the redundancy of two 4110s to have the capability, the expandability, and the redundancy from day one.
That firewall is one of those items, one of several items, I'd say, that are part of the network that if that goes down or has issues, everything is down at that point. So it's one of those very important pieces that you want to make sure you have kind of a plan D or that redundancy built into it, not only for that reason, but also allowing us to do maintenance on one of the devices while the second one keeps things running. Otherwise, it's very difficult for us to come up with times within the district where we can do maintenance, because there's always after school, activities and sports and everything else. And since this equipment is now not only tied into the internet, but the phones, the PAs, everything in the district is running through this equipment now. And so it's extremely important that we try to keep it up and running as much as possible. So.
And speaking of that, that's a very good example of before the bond, we had quite a bit running on the network. Since the bond work, just about everything runs on the network. So that's the growth and expandability that has happened in the last 5 years that the IT department is looking at, saying, we don't know what the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years is going to bring, but we can pretty sure guarantee that it's going to bring expansion and more traffic. What that traffic is from, it could be more online textbooks, which we are going towards, or something that we don't even know is out there yet that we want to start using.
Mrs. Frank has a question.
That was one of my questions, was what do you see the expanded capacity needing? More computers? Is that why we need expanded capacity? And some of it, I think Phil just said, is that you don't know exactly what we're going to need, but
it could be a combination.
Some of it could be if we have more computers, more Chromebooks, that sort of thing. And I think one of the things that you said about the importance of having our system up and running, that if this goes down, I think that not only are teachers not able to access their grade books, but a lot of times we only have a certain amount of time. Mrs. Oquist, you can correct me, from the state to do online testing, to do MSTEP, that sort of thing. We only have a certain amount of time when our computers go down and the kids are working on the computers and our firewall goes down. That's a significant challenge for the district, as well as having our phones on it and everything on it. So it's not just that the kids are doing research on the computer and the firewall goes down, or the teachers can't access their grade books. It's a lot more that happens in the district other than that is why this is vitally important to the district. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's increasing computers, the number of devices we have, but also the content that's being accessed. So streaming video, there's a lot more of that going on, which is a lot more intensive as far as the demands on the system than, say, looking something up in Google or whatever. So
you may recall, Mrs. Frank, we experienced that this past year when we had those wide-scale power outages. And although this would not assist in a power outage, what it did show us is when our main system goes down at central office, the impact it has across transportation, the connectivity with our schools, and when that main hub is not accessible, we now have many systems within the district that in the past were not connected that are. So that really was very illustrative, I think, across our district when that happened, the connectivity of all of our technology access points.
Are there any questions to this point? So, because what Mr. Klan has done is gone through the base bid and then the two alternates that come together, and then the one alternate that hasn't been mentioned yet, and I'm just going to jump down to it, is number 16, because that's simply the 2-day support, which means that if an appliance goes down within the 5-year warranty period, they'll be out within 2 days.
One correction to that. So this is actually upgrade support. That 2-day support is upgrade support. The vendors typically, and the significance of the 2-day is that this is we request that they come out and help us with an upgrade. They have 2 days to come out to do it. We have 8-hour, 5-day a week, next business day warranty if the device goes down or if there's a hardware failure. They come out very quickly, and that's the significance of the 2-day. The vendors typically, you pay more the faster you want them to respond. You can get 1-hour response if you want, but the costs are incredibly high with that. So when we chose to go with some support for the upgrades, we picked the 2-day. There's less cost with that because there's not such an immediate demand for them to come out.
So that bundle, alternate 1, 4, and 16, is $151,024.23. Yes.
Mr. Francis, can you discuss there's a couple alternates that were not included. Can you discuss those?
If it's okay, I'd like to do that after
Sure.
we sort of touch on this final piece of the cost of the items that we're going. Then we can talk about the other alternates and why they weren't chosen.
Sounds
if
good.
that's okay. Okay. So $151, $24.23 is the total bid amount for the base bid plus alternates 1, 4, and 16, which are all the items that Mr. Klan has explained. So actually, the contract amount would be $137,294.75, and then we have a contingency of 10% on that with regard. And what would you imagine the contingency may be used for? Is it during the installation process if something goes down?
It could be potentially support labor time and configuration and setup of the system if there was something that wasn't accounted for in our bid specifications.
Similar to in construction when you open up a wall and you find something. Are there questions up to this point on the contract amount, the contingency, or the items that we're recommending?
Is there anything, Lindsay, that you feel like we need to add?
No, I think they're doing a fine job, actually.
So at this point, I'm going to ask Mr. Klan to go over the alternates that we did not choose and why we decided that we were going to not recommend them. It's not that they're not good items to have, but we wanted to do that balance between cost and the need.
As we look through the sheet, the Barton Mallow letter on the second page, the first option with the base bid, essentially the 2130 appliance just wasn't going to be able to handle the traffic that we needed, which is why we moved away from that one. The option 3, which is very similar to the one we chose, but only it includes the what they call the IPS and the AMP, which is the advanced security protection, the anti-malware protection. Those are something that we looked at and talked about and went into detail with the vendors on when we had our discussions. And definitely something we would love to have, but as you can see, that would add an additional $75,000 to the price. Not that we don't need it, we'd love to have it, but again, we like to look at the network and the security of the network as different layers of security. No one device or system is going to prevent us from getting attacked from the outside and somebody getting into the system. So we try to put as many layers in as possible to try to prevent that. So currently, we would have the firewall in place, which is actually a great layer of security there. We have our iBoss filtering system, which filters traffic coming in and out of the district. We do have advanced threat protection through Microsoft on the individual computers in the district, which again offers another layer of protection. So, this would be another one that you mix in there, hoping that one of them will catch whatever it is. And that you'll see as we move forward in the future that there's a lot of unique things that are trying to come in, and they do it in very unique ways. And it's getting more and more difficult to catch a lot of those before they get in. The systems that they're coming out with now use artificial intelligence to try to determine, based on traffic patterns, what that new thing is and how to stop it. So that's part of the reason for that added cost, I think, is they're developing and finding new ways to do this, and they can do it on the fly, make changes immediately, go in and get rid of whatever it was that did get through as soon as they realized that it did. And there's, as you look at the other alternates, the other 16 alternates that were listed, You'll notice a lot of those have to do with that different combinations of that advanced threat protection, the IPS and the AMP, in different combinations with hardware that we were looking at as well. There's also, if you look down at voluntary alternate 13 and 14, which are content filtering or umbrella for education, I think it's called.
They don't have the full one.
Okay. There is.
Well, we tried not to completely blow
Yeah.
your mind and show you the dozens of alternates that were there. So instead of having that full list, we packaged them. Barton Mallow did a nice job of creating a recommendation letter that had 3 bundled options so that we could just sort of talk about, in essence, we're talking about the base model hardware, which we've all decided does not have the capacity that we were looking for. So we are absolutely recommending moving up to the 4110. And then different bundles of either advanced threat protection, which we've, I think, decided and then tried to explain. We have those 3 layers currently. It would be a nice to have, but not something that we're not open completely. We have multiple layers. And then also just different varieties of the redundancies and whatnot. So we didn't want, it can be very confusing. I've gone over it several times with Mr. Klan. I still go, hold on a second, what was that last piece we talked about? It's meaty, it's a very meaty bid, and the recommendation is not as straightforward as some of the ones that we usually come in and say, hey, look, this building needs a new roof, here we go, kind of thing. But we feel that the recommendation we're bringing forward is a good combination of technology, hardware and software, and protections to the district, while also not taking the budget and quadrupling it and going really, really sort of sky's the limit type of recommendation.
And that was part of the reason for all the alternates is we wanted to see everything that was available and see what combinations we could put together, but also being mindful and respectful of what the original budget was and trying to stay as close to that as we could, but getting as much as possible.
Great. Any questions?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very
Appreciate it.
information.
Thank you.
Bill, this is going to be ready for next Monday, correct?
Please.
Great. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Recommendation, item C is recommendation to purchase elementary flexible furniture for grants. Hayes, Kennedy, and Roosevelt Elementary Schools, again, out of the 2013 bonds. And Miss Cindy Scott will be our presenter this evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So once again, I'm bringing forward plans for flexible furniture using the 2013 bond funds. And these purchases, again, just for review, are a phase 3 item targeted for elementary furniture to supplement the student furniture previously purchased using the 2013 bond funds. And again, the quotes utilize the National Intergovernmental Purchasing Alliance discount program available to educational institutions. So that satisfies our district's bidding requirements. We have 4 schools who formed a school committee, gathered input from staff, and worked together with the vendors to create flexible furniture plans specific for their schools. Each of the 4 schools that we're bringing forward tonight consulted with Interior Environments to design their plans. And the first school, as you'll see in your packet, is Grant Elementary. And their plan includes furniture for a part of their library, hallways, and classrooms based on individual teacher choice. And their proposal totals $39,924.72. So we can look through the packet there for Grant. So on page, it says it has a 3 there at the bottom. Page 3 shows a little bit of a little corner section of the library where they bring in some groups of students and some small group instruction. So a little bit different layout than what we've seen before, so kind of fun. And then Grant has several pages here, pages 4, 5, 6, and 7. You'll see several different choices, and classroom teachers were allowed to choose what would be good for their classrooms. Whether they needed something for a table to work with students, or different seating options, or different sizes of mailboxes depending upon the size and the space that they had available. You can see like the table there. I love that table that they can fold up and push over to the side and not have to use when they don't need to. And like on page 6, again, we've seen that those middle seating areas before, middle seating options. And again, page 7. So they got to choose a couple of different options depending upon price for the classroom. So that was kind of exciting to hear that. And on page 8, that very last picture, we've seen that before in several of the, it's kind of become kind of a choice that schools have decided to use, because kids can go and sit out there in the hallway and be able to read or work on something and have some supplies right there at their, literally at their feet. So that's great. The second school is Hayes Elementary. Their plan includes furnitures for their main lobby. If you've been there at Hayes, then you'll right as you walk in to the left, there's a pretty big area there. And then a lunch overflow area, which is across from the lunchroom and the gym area, and also close to the teacher workroom. And then again, a very small little area in the library where they bring in some small groups and some individual classrooms. And their proposal totals $35,874.90. So in your packet, we have has a 4 down there at the bottom, page 4. You can kind of see it's very similar to what we have at central office. This has become kind of one of these things. Oh, I now see it in action. Would like to have it at our school. So kind of exciting to see that. I can just imagine how that's going to be used. The next page, you can see they'll have a couple of tables, and they're going to have, I think, about 8 chairs, they said there, that will be able to help with some overflow from the lunchroom, and also, again, to have small groups being able to work there. And then a little corner section of the library where they bring in some students to work on some different projects. And then the classroom storage, teachers had a choice there as to, again, what fit into their classrooms and what they needed. So that's Hayes. The next one, the third school tonight, is Kennedy, and their plan includes furniture for their makerspace, their lobby, and they're creating a collaboration area. Their proposal totals $35,939.11. And in their packet, they have the very first space is like collaboration space, and that's in the lobby area. And as they explained it to me, they'll be able to pull that table in and out to be able to handle some different STEM type things that that they're kind of planning on. And again, you can see that whole configuration of what we have at central office in the one area. So that's kind of cool. The next page, again in the library, in this one little part where they bring some students, they chose a few seating, different seats there, and that will have that tablet arm so that they can work with a Chromebook or be just writing with pencil and paper there. Again in the hallway, again, this chair, ottoman type area with a drawer storage at the bottom. And then on page 9, they have 3 different interventionist rooms, and so they plan to outfit them with table that has a writable surface on it, and to have a little seating area in all 3 of those areas. And then for the classroom, on that very last page, it has a 10 at the bottom. It has for kindergarten and first grade. They decided to start with those 2 grades, and they will get this type of optional seating. So that is Kennedy. And the last school tonight is Roosevelt Elementary. Areas that will be impacted include the collaboration room, which if you go into Roosevelt through the north end by the back parking lot, then it'll be the first door on your left. And that's kind of across from the lunchroom, and then the lobby area. And their proposal totals $34,978.06. And so Roosevelt, we open that up. And so this is a pretty large room that I'm really excited that Roosevelt's finally able to put some furniture in there that they'll be able to utilize in many different ways. So you can kind of see the options that they have put down there. Looks kind of like a fun space to bring students, small groups as well as a whole group. And then the lobby area, I don't know why, but the middle part, and I call it a tractor, I don't know, that just really does thrill me. At first he wasn't going to be able to get that, and then realized that that with some changes with the cost of some of the furniture, he was able to get the tractor, and I was so excited that he gets the tractor. But I don't know if it's called the tractor or not, I can't remember. I just know that I like it. So, but it has, again, you can see it has the writable surface on there. They have the drawers at the end that they can put things in it. So either crayons or paper or whatever that happens to be. So a nice area for them to be able to bring some small groups and utilize that space, not just, you know, for people who are waiting or for kids who are waiting, but also for some small group instruction. So very exciting. And so the total of all four quotes is $146,716.79. And I'm requesting that this be brought forward and put on the agenda for May 20th at our regular meeting. And that will leave us with only one elementary school left. Hey! So, have any questions?
Anyone? Questions, comments? Yeah, Mr. Johnson.
Just to kind of, you know, sometimes if the public tunes in and they just see these in a bit of an abstract, us board members have been in the schools and seen some of the furniture that's in there.
No.
And it really makes a difference in those areas.
It does. The kids get excited, the staff get excited, and they want to be able to go to some of those spaces. And some of the spaces that you almost see as unusable, now they're making them usable again. So that is exciting.
It's exciting stuff, yeah. Thank you for everyone who's,
Yep, thank
you. Building level, everyone who's worked on this, and obviously a lot of work goes into all of these, and thank you, Mrs. Scott, for going through all of these elementary buildings.
Absolutely. They started this process the last spring. So about a year later, we'll have all of them finished.
That's great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Johnson, that concludes Building and Site.
Thank you, Mr. Centers. That'll take us to item 5, our Finance Committee, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Bonnefield.
Thank you, President Johnson. We have 2 items tonight. The first one is Wayne Risa budget, and Mrs. Smith will help us out on that.
Thank you, Mrs. Bonnefield. This is something that we look at every year. Michigan law requires the intermediate school districts to submit their budgets to review to the local districts for feedback, and then law requires our board to pass either approval or some suggestions for changes. So that's what we have for you tonight. I wanted to point out a few highlights in the Wayne Risa budget. First off, starting with their general fund. They're projecting the beginning fund balance to be up $442,000 for next year, revenue to be up $181,000, and then expenditures to be up $534,000. But that still leaves an ending fund balance of $12.3 million, or 68.5%. And why I think that's important for the local districts to know is that we can expect some continuity in the services that they provide to the local districts. They explain that the increase in expenditures is related to salary increases and steps that are built into their employee contracts. They also are a hard cap district, so their health insurance costs will be going up 1.9%, which was the consumer price index increase for next year. So those will take effect in January. Another item I wanted to point out, you may have noticed that the enhancement millage fund, they're projecting the revenue and expenditures to be up slightly in that fund by $131,800. Livonia Public Schools makes up about 6.78% of the share of the enhancement millage. So for us, it's not huge, but we'll take any increase we can get. So I'm estimating that our Wayne County enhancement millage revenues to be up by just under $9,000 for next year, and they equate that to higher taxable values in Wayne County. The other fund that I wanted to point out was the Act 18 fund. As you all know, we are an operator of 4 of the Act 18 programs. They are anticipating the revenues to be up $4.9 million for that, again related to the taxable values being up across Wayne County. They're also budgeting for increased outgoing transfers to the operating districts by $7.2 million. And we saw that here in our district through our 1920 budget approvals. We saw some things that were historically not approved that they considered this year and approved, so we were very happy with that. One other item of note this year we saw that came out of the Act 18 fund was our reimbursement for special ed transportation costs. This year, our payment was $400,000 more than what it was last year. And what they're doing there is reimbursing us for the unfunded special ed transportation costs we have in our district. The state reimburses us for 70%, and so 30% goes unfunded. And this payment is trying to make us whole as far as the special ed transportation goes. So in my review, nothing stood out in the budget that really stood out as a big change from this year to next year. They again look to be in healthy condition, so I assume that they'll continue the supports that they have in place now for local districts and continue to be open to dialogue on how they can continue to support their local districts.
Does anybody have any questions for Mrs. Smith? Mrs. Burton?
Mrs. Smith, I'm not sure if I didn't see it in here. I'm not sure if I'm just missing it. Are they now budgeting for the next year for the reimbursement for our special ed transportation?
They haven't publicly announced that, but when I take a look at what their outgoing transfers to other governmental units is, that is up. So I would assume that the revenue that we saw from them for that payment will be the same for next year, and what I would propose including in our budget for the 1920 year.
Okay, because in previous years we didn't budget for it because we just weren't sure, because it was brand new and it wasn't guaranteed year to year. But you're saying this year you feel more comfortable budgeting for it, so we can plan on that.
In fact, this year was the first year that we did include it in the proposed budget, but we included $775,000 because that was what we had gotten the prior years. But this year they surprised us and our reimbursement was over $1 million.
Okay, great.
So we that was included in our March financial update, and we'll include that in our formal budget amendment that we'll bring to the board in June.
Mrs. Oakwest?
Thank you. We also shared with you, I believe, at our study session last week, that Dr. Terrell presented our Act 18 budget to the Act 18 committee. And we did have some additional requests for ancillary staff and support staff that was approved as part of our Act 18 budget. So I appreciate Dr. Terrell and her team for putting together a very comprehensive request to support the extensive needs of our learners and, as you know, the continued growth of the Act 18 programs that we provide in our district. So all of those requests were approved. And we believe that is also reflected as part of the planned expenditures from Wayne County RESA.
Anybody else? Okay.
Follow up. You mentioned that we house 4 of the Act 18 or the county-wide special ed programs. How many are there in total? Do you know or do you not know?
You know what? I will refer to Dr. Terrell.
The programs that we service, or how many individual programs are in districts?
How many are in districts? So so example, we house 4 out of how many that are in Wayne County? Or is that just not a question you know? And if you don't, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Well, there's the dual diagnosed program that we do not have. There's an SXI for severely multiple impaired students that Northville runs. SCI for severely cognitively impaired. There's the POHI outreach program that Wayne Westland runs. So there's a variety of other programs that other districts run that we do not run. The severely emotionally impaired program in Redford Union, for example. So we run 4 out of approximately 10 additional programs.
Okay, so we have a significant chunk then. We take care of a significant chunk of those Act 18 programs for the Western Wayne County districts.
That's correct, and then we facilitate those programs like our ASD program and our MOCI programs, preschool through post-high school. So 2 years, 9 months to age 26 years of age as well. So we also run the full educational experience for students, where some districts run only a small portion of those. We run all of them.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
I would be happy to put that information into our packet for the regular board meeting. I know that Reese's got that information, will include what the different programs are, as well as how many students in the Act 18 program we have, and then how many students there are across the county.
Okay, great. And I would hope that that reinforces to Wayne Risa that our requests are certainly justified. I mean, these are very high costs, and we take care of a significant number of the students in the entire Western Wayne County area. So, again, I echo the thanks to Dr. Terriel for advocating for the needs and for the reimbursement for some of these costs. So thank you.
Anybody else? And then we'll put this on the May 20th meeting for a vote.
Yes, please.
Okay. And then our second item tonight is also Mrs. Smith, and that is the appointment of our auditors.
I wanted to share with the board tonight some background information as far as our external audit goes, as well as some of the history here in our district. To flash back to 2009 through 2011, our external auditors were Yo and Yo. And then in 2012, we did an RFP for accounting auditing services, and Plant Moran was selected. So we have used Plant Moran since 2012. For the school years ending 2012 through 2016, the partner in charge was Harry Pollock. We now have a new partner in charge. It has rotated now to Lisa Bargo. She was the partner in charge last year, and if the board decides to approve Plant Moran again, she would be the partner in charge for this school year. There are normally at least 3 staff members that are assigned to our district for the audit. Since 2012, Tom Marchese has been a consistent staff accountant on our district, but there's 2 other staff accountant positions, and those have rotated throughout the years. And it's nice the way that they've arranged that, where we've got, partners, maybe switching some of the staff accountants, but Tom's there, and he brings some, history along, but then we also have some fresh eyes taking a look at our processes and what we do. So we appreciate the way that they've staffed this engagement. Ultimately, external audits are compliance audits, whatever to ensure that taxpayer dollars are being used in the way that they were intended to be used. Examples, they check to make sure that we're complying with local, state, and federal guidelines. An example on the local level is they do check our board policy, and if we say that we're going to do something, that we're going to bring it to board approval for anything over $23,000, make sure that we're compliant with that, and they do testing around that. On the state level, they're making sure, for example, that our sinking fund is in compliance with the sinking fund legislation, and that they do take that very seriously, and that if we are out of compliance, they would report that to the Department of Treasury, and then we might lose our ability to levy a sinking fund. So that's something that they include when they're doing their testing. On the federal side, it's taking a look at our federal grants to make sure that we're spending our federal dollars in compliance with what the approved budget is. And again, making sure that we have proper controls in place, proper cash handling, proper procurement. So that all gets looked at on an annual basis by our auditors. The reason and one other thing I wanted to mention too, because we receive over $750,000 worth of federal dollars, we're required to have a single audit. And the Office of Management and Budget on the federal level sets different accounting standards and different compliance requirements that the auditors must test every year. And so I wanted to reassure the board that Plant Moran isn't, in essence, they don't get to pick what they're taking a look at, that they have to follow guidelines that are put out by the federal government as well as our state government on different areas that they need to test every year. So they're compliant in that. I am recommending that we continue with Plant Moran. They are a leader in K-12 accounting, and they've showed that through their involvement with various organizations, including MSBO, that's the Michigan School Business Officials, MASA, and then MASB. They're continually being tapped on because people know that they're a leader in the K-12 accounting world to do presentations. They involve themselves in the MDE accounting committee, so that they're always abreast of things that are happening. I believe they are the second largest K-12 auditing firm in the nation, so they bring a lot of experience. And so for that reason, it's my recommendation that we continue with Plant Moran for this coming year.
Questions? Any questions? Good. Okay, thank you. And we'll put this on the May 20th agenda as well for a vote.
Thank you.
And that concludes finance.
Thank you, Mrs. Donahue. That'll take us to item 6, our curriculum committee, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you, President Johnson. We only have one item on the curriculum committee agenda tonight, and that is the elementary music sound systems with Mr. Willenborg. Take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Jarvis. Good evening, everybody. It's kind of fun to be at a different school. It's a beautiful school. Again, on behalf of the secretary, thanks for all the help in these renovations and new furniture. But we're here for the third time now to continue this conversation about sound systems in our K through 6, our elementary schools. Last week, we started that third round, and our effort here has been put through our elementary music teachers, particularly James Murphy has helped out a lot, and our teacher leader, Miss Elizabeth Herring, our music teacher leader, Miss Elizabeth Herring. But our goal was to equip each K through 6 music classroom with a high-quality music sound system. That system would include then a portable Bluetooth-capable rack system and a receiver and a CD player, as well as wall-mounted music-quality speakers. We want these systems. We need these systems. If we want our kids to sing, they've got to have some background music. If we want them to dance and to move, they've got to have some music that's beyond the PA system speakers. If we want them to understand, feel a pulse and a beat and understand rhythm, we need music quality speakers. So we've put a request for purchase out. We had 3 bids come back. In analyzing those bids, as you can see in your packet, we went with a low bidder, Sound Planning Communications. We did have to make a slight change order. Again, they have the lowest unit price, but we're looking to purchase 19 systems for 12 elementary schools. Webster gets 2, and then 2 each for the 5 6s. So it'd be 19 total systems. That cost comes to $79,844, approximately $4,202 per unit. And these funds are designated from the 2013 bond. My recommendation is that this item be placed on next week's regular meeting agenda. Questions?
Just to make sure I understand, these are going to be mounted in the elementary music classroom, so they're not a portable unit to move around.
The rack would be portable. The speakers will be installed
in the music classroom.
In the music classrooms.
Okay, so in other words, you can't take this unit into a regular classroom, or can you? I mean, do you see what I'm saying?
Not without the.
It stays. It's just.
It's
for the
not
music.
designed to take it into the other classroom.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
It will be. It is kind of designed in the future. What we're looking at is speakers in the performance areas, the gyms generally. To look by some speakers there that we could roll that rack into.
And then it could be used like in a cafeteria or something like that if somebody needed to make announcements.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Is this you, Mrs. Gray? Oh, yeah. So this does not include the speakers for like the gym, correct, right now?
That's correct. It's just classroom speakers.
Okay. I just wanted to just compliment all of our music teachers. I think several of us were at Hoover last weekend and heard just what they're doing with music, and it is such a joy to hear these kids sing and to be able to provide them with materials and equipment that they can have we were just talking earlier about kids needing an outlet, and I think for some kids it's music, and so to be able to provide them with quality equipment so that they can learn and they can enjoy the music. I think our teachers do a phenomenal job with making music fun and really bringing out music in all the kids, whether or not they're musically inclined. But I think that this is an honor to provide the classrooms teachers with, so thank you.
It'll be a much more robust experience.
Yes.
President Johnson.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. Mr. Ruler, are we anticipating that these will be installed during the summer and available then for the fall?
Yes, that's the plan. Fully expect to carry that out if the board approves next week, that they'll be ready to go as we start classes in the fall.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr. Wallenberg.
Thank you.
And President Johnson, that concludes the curriculum report.
Thank you, Mrs. Jarvis. That'll take us to item 7, Policy Committee, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Burton.
Thank you, President Johnson. The first item under policy this evening is Board Policy EDEB, Walkers and Riders, and we will hear from Mr. Francis.
Good evening again, everybody. The policy that you have in front of you is only in the packet, as I mentioned at the study session, as reference to the exhibit that was with the board policy. So EDDB, which is dated December 19, 2016, and reviewed again in May of 2018, is not up for any changes. What we discussed with the board at the study session last week was the exhibit that is dated October 28, 2013. The suggestion of the board was to remove this exhibit. Mrs. Burton, you had asked if this information was found on the website. I checked it. In fact, I checked it again the next morning and noticed there was a piece missing from what was in here, so we had revised it. It's back up on the website under the transportation tab. And so this information is found on the website, plus it's posted on the buses and it's in other areas that are accessible, but again, the easiest being the website.
Okay. Are there questions or comments on the exhibit? Mrs. Bradford.
This exhibit is also in the student handbooks, is that correct?
That is for the student handbooks and on the buses. Yes. Okay. And it's also posted, not that it's also in transportation, which students don't go into, but it reminds the drivers that that's what the rules are as well.
Well, just for parents, they would be able to reference it in the student handbook.
But the website is always 24/7, 365.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Thank you. Just a note to correct the review date to make it 2019.
Actually, not. It was reviewed in 2000. The board policy was reviewed in 2018.
Okay.
And it is the exhibit that we're talking about right now. But they're adding the review date of that. But that one was reviewed last year at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Questions, Mrs.
This is just for our information. Are we going to bring this up at the regular voting meeting, or we're done with this?
We will not.
We're done with
I'll go
this.
over exactly why in just a moment, but yes.
Yep, okay.
Other questions or comments on this exhibit, EDDB? Just so folks who are maybe listening at home understand, there are 3 different types of items that you'll find in our policy book, which is now online, but still called our policy book. There's policy, which these items are basically what is supposed to happen. The students will behave appropriately on the bus is a very loosely phrased example. Policies are voted on by the Board of Education, and they have to go through a strict process. They've got to be discussed at a committee of the whole, and then they go through 2 formal voting meetings. One that we review it, or we have a first reading, and the next one that we actually vote on it. So policy is the only thing that's actually voted on by the Board of Education, and it's the what's going to happen. The next level is our administrative procedures, and that's how is it going to happen. Those are specifically, given the bus example, specifically what types of things are going to be going on with students in their behavior on the bus. And again, this is, if the policy is what what's going to be happening, the administrative procedure is up to our administration. It's a day-to-day operations. It's how is it going to happen. So we say at the board level, students will behave. Administrators say this is specifically how it's going to be broken out. Because that is an administrative tool or a day-to-day operations type tool, the administrative procedures are something that's brought before the board for our information, perhaps for some input, but it's not something that the board votes on. That is up to our administrative team, so our superintendent, cabinet, and administrators. Exhibits are the next level down. So we have policy, we have administrative procedures. The next level down and the last level in that book you would find are exhibits. Those are, for lack of a better term, forms or little details. Most of the time it's a form to be filled out. We are in the process of weeding almost all of those exhibits out of our policy book because they are much more readily accessible to parents and staff, and much more readily accessible to anybody who needs to update or amend those forms if they're on our website. It's a much easier place to go. We usually have these exhibits, most of them pertain to parents, so if they do, they're under the parent or the community section of our website. If they pertain to staff, they're in other sections that are accessible to staff. That way, again, if it's 9 o'clock at night and you want to look up something, you can click on it and it's right there at your fingertips. Because the board does not vote on these exhibits, and we don't have to have immediate access to them as much as staff or parents do, we're weeding those out of the books and putting those directly online. So that's basically the difference in the 3 levels and why the board votes on some things and does not vote on others. Anyway, I'm going to turn that back over to Mr. Francis. Any other items or any other concerns on this specific item, EDDB exhibit? Okay, seeing as that's an exhibit, we will not be voting on it, and therefore, Mrs. Bonnefield will not be taking any further action on this.
Very good. I'll notify Mrs. Wozniak to have it removed from that portion.
Absolutely. And again, if parents want to find it, you can find it on the website.
Under the transportation tab.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda for policy is Board Policy JLB, Class Gifts to Schools. And our presenter is Mr. Willenborg.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Often at 9 o'clock at night, I find myself, looking up.
Sure you do, yes.
Thank you for that.
Only on Monday nights, right, when you're sitting here.
First policy I'd like to continue our review is policy JLB, which is class gifts to students. We've had an effort to try to clean up our policy book and make sure that items are clearly understood. And when we read through this, we felt that the language in that first paragraph was a little murky and obscure. The second paragraph, it's just a 2-sentence policy, but the second paragraph or second sentence, needed a bit of language rejuvenation as well. So what you have in red there is our revised policy that makes it kind of clear. We're talking about graduation legacy gifts from a class, and that they need prior approval from the building level student government as well as the building administration. So that's the gist of that new policy. Change 2 sentences for 2 sentences are a little more clear cut, a little more solid, I feel. This policy is not to be referenced with policy DFK, which is gifts and bequests, not to be referenced. So my recommendation is this item be placed on the agenda for next week, regular meeting for a first reading.
Sounds good. Questions or comments on this policy? Again, not changing the general, just pretty much just an updating of the language. All right, Mrs. Bonnefield, will you put this on the agenda for our next regular meeting for our first reading?
Thank you.
Thank you. And our last item under policy is Board Policy JM, Contests for Students. Mr. Bullenborg.
Contests for students. This policy, and when we reviewed this policy, it also seemed rather murky and unclear. We scratched our head a bit, and without additional context, the current policy, we felt raises more questions than it answers. The contest is a broad term. I asked the other secondary principals for their feedback, and they expressed that it's really not a meaningful policy. They certainly don't. It's not relevant to their day-to-day operations. So in line with our effort to clean up that LPS policy book, our recommendation is to eliminate, scratch out, policy JM, contests for students. My recommendation is that we put this on the agenda for next week's voting meeting for a first reading.
Mr. Willenborg, again, kind of going back to our study session last week, one of the things that we talked about regarding this is if there was ever any kind of question about a contest that someone did or wanted to offer to our students or whatever, ultimately that authority already rests with our principals, whether or not that's permissible.
That's correct.
Okay, so this is really rather redundant under the general broad authority of our principals. So we're still keeping whatever restrictions we feel are appropriate. It's just that we don't need this policy to do it.
That's correct. It's not going to change our day-to-day operations if this is not in place.
Other questions or comments on removing this policy from the book as it reads? Alrighty, thank you very much. And seeing none, Mrs. Bonfield, likewise, we put this on our agenda for first reading.
Yes, thank you.
President Johnson, that completes policy.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. That'll take us to item 8, our Personnel Committee. Mrs. Frank, do you have anything?
We do not.
Thank you, and that takes us to item 9, our Legislative Committee. Mrs. Bradford.
We do not, thank you.
Very good. So we have come to the end of our agenda rather quickly tonight. And before we go, just to let everybody know, it looks like it's really easy that we just walked into another school and lo and behold, we're on television. That doesn't happen by accident. It takes a lot of work to set this all up. And Fred Karn is responsible for that. Fred, thank you.
And Alex who's helping on the other end.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex.
And with that, we have nothing else, then we are adjourned. Thank you.
We have our special meeting.